From muddy jungle paths to snowy trails to rolling sand dunes, the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder is ready to take you to some of the most phenomenal destinations on Earth. In a Pathfinder, it's more than just the arrival. The real excitement comes from the ride to get there. With 7 drive modes, Pathfinder's available intelligent 4-wheel drive is built for some of the most epic journeys. So chase bigger, better, more exciting adventures in the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. Intelligent 4-wheel drive cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by all the choices in the supermarket? I have, on nearly every single trip. I have my go-to brands, but how do I know if I'm picking the right one? I mean, what do they stand for? What are their values? Is it the best selection for the price? And by price, I mean the actual cost at the cash register, but also the greater cost, the one that impacts my health and our environment. And then what do they do, operations-wise, to support communities, like the communities of farmers who dedicate their lives to producing that product? Are they paid fairly, treated with respect? And how do these products fit into our economic equation? Are they an economic driver, fueling the economy, or are they just on the take for the right now? Imagine a world where each small choice at the grocery store or farmer's market could help heal our planet, improve your health, and strengthen your community and local economy. What if I told you that it's possible? What if you could make informed decisions that have a big impact with just a little effort? My name is DiPrima, and this is One Bite is Everything, the podcast that shows you how you can have a big impact on your health, your community, and the planet through tiny informed choices. Today, we go beyond the label with Organic Valley. We literally dive into the milk carton to find out what's in there. And what's in there, just for starters, is Sabrina Cervais, a 5th-generation farmer who has just come back to the family farm after graduating from college.
When I was going to college, most of the kids I went to school with weren't actually farm kids because their grandparents had to sell off the farms when they were babies. So like late 90s, early 2000s. So a lot of these kids are growing up and entering the dairy industry are like 2nd generation removed from the farm almost.
Yeah. And you're 3rd generation.
Yep. On our farm, technically. I think I'm 5th generation overall, but on the farm we're on, I'm 3rd generation.
So it's pretty interesting to me that you went to college and now you're coming back to the farm. I think there are a lot of dairy families where the kids are like, yeah, there's no future. Dairy farming in the U.S. gets a bad rap because of worries about how cows are treated, pollution from farms, which is being tied to the climate change crisis, health concerns about dairy, large companies monopolizing the industry, and how workers are treated. Also, a large portion of the population have moved toward plant-based milk options, leaving small family dairy farms at the mercy of large corporations. There are a ton of misconceptions around dairy farming. So hopefully this conversation with Sabrina will help give you some insight into the kinds of decisions that you're making when you're choosing your milk in the supermarket.
My dad really made us go out and find your passion. He had us do. So the requirement was me and my brothers all had to go to school. I have 2 brothers. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And we all had to go to school. And my mom made sure we all went to school as well. So me and my older brother both went to UW-Madison and studied dairy science. And my younger brother went to a local trade school for diesel mechanics. And all 3 of us came back to the farm in the end. It's been a really interesting adjustment having all 3 of us back, and I don't think my parents planned on all 3 of us coming back. But one thing my dad said is that whenever they talked about farming around us, you can't always talk about all the bad things because there's so many good things that come out of it too. If you stand in front of your children and all you talk about is, oh, we don't have money, oh, there's no future, oh, I don't know how we're going to get through the year. If that's all you talk about, you're setting a bad precedence of what farming is for your kids. So it's really important that, yeah, there's a ton of hardships, but there's so many great moments too in agriculture and in farming. And we need to make sure that we're showing that not only to our consumers and the other people we work with, but also to our kids.
Tell me about one of the great moments that you remember as a dairy kid.
One thing that I think really sticks out to me is my little brother isn't always a big animal guy. He's a truck guy. He's an equipment guy. But sometimes I forget that at the end of the day, he really, really loves all of the animals. And there was one day, me and my brothers and my dad were over at our heifer farm, and we're cleaning pens out. We were going to bed the calves. It'd been really rainy recently. It was kind of muddy over there. We cleaned all the pens out, and we're putting all this fresh bedding down, and it was dusty, but it was nice and clean. And we're just watching the calves kick and buck and jump around and having a blast in their pens, just checking out their new bedding, and they're sniffing it and they're playing with each other. And my little brother's playing with them. And it was just one of those things you watch and you remember because, it was happy. It was good. And we were all together as a family.
What about a moment that kind of shook you?
There was a time a while back when there was a big storm that came through and it wiped out so much stuff. Like all the corn was lodged over and the hutches had been picked up and swept away, and the farm just looked horrible. And you kind of have to sit there and think to yourself, oh, is the corn going to recover? Are we going to be able to get the harvest that we wanted? There's calves and cows everywhere. We got to make sure we fix all the hutches and get everything reset up and make sure all the cows are safe in the barn, and just making sure everything is in a place where it can work. And when you're sitting there staring at everything and knowing that it's been hard in the dairy industry, I mean, when I was in old upper high school, so like junior, senior year, 2018, all that, things were starting to get hard again. 2015, 2016, things were going good. And then you get to a point where you're standing there in the middle of the farm looking out and you're thinking, oh, I have all these problems going on that aren't physically on the farm, but now I have all this to handle. Moments like that, you go, okay, what's the next step? What can I do right now? How can I get back on track? I told Dad the other day, I said, the farm's kind of like a train and our job is to put down the track. So as long as we have track to run the farm, we'll be okay. And things are going to come. It's going to be hard to put down that track sometime, but as long as we can keep the train going up the hill, we'll still be in business. We'll still keep going.
At Horizon Organics, Sabrina oversees the milking of around 350 cows twice a day, producing approximately 24,000 pounds of milk daily. The milk is collected once a day by a truck and combined with milk from other farms before being transported to various destinations, including local creameries or out-of-state locations like Indiana, Missouri, or even Texas. Sometimes their milk is not needed locally due to oversupply in Wisconsin, so it's transported to areas with fewer dairy farms. Your milk is organic.
Yep.
And tell me what that means exactly.
So USDA certified organic milk goes through multiple checks to ensure that we are meeting criteria to be sold organic. So that'll include no use of antibiotics. The food or the feed that we're giving our animals is non-GMO. We haven't been using synthetic pesticides or herbicides or fungicides on the crops when we raise them to feed our animals. There's a few other requirements. We have to have them going out on pasture throughout the summer. They need a certain amount of their dry matter intake. That's the food they eat with the water removed. A certain percentage of that has to come from the pastures during the summertime and throughout the year if possible. So our milk goes to Organic Valley, and some of their milk is grass-fed, 100% grass-fed. So all of their cows only eat grass. And then our cows are not 100% grass-fed, even though they're still getting grass throughout the year and throughout the summertime. So they're also getting a little bit of corn and minerals added into their diet. Fun fact, corn is technically a grass. It's just that the grain part of it is so high in nutrient that it kind of takes away from that aspect of it being grass.
So when you're feeding corn to cows, it's not necessarily the corn, like corn on the cob. It's the whole plant.
Yes. So there's two different ways we feed corn. We can feed it as in a grain form where it's like all the cob shredded up and then fed to the cow. Or there's corn silage, which is the entire stalk, and that's what we grow. So in the summertime, or I guess in the spring, we start plowing and then we'll plant the corn. And then I come through on what's called a cultivator, and it's a contraption that has spades on the back. And I drive through the rows of the corn and I weed the corn using that. And it is a huge undertaking because usually it's just me on the tractor and it's a 6 row, so I can only do 6 rows of corn at a time. And we do anywhere from 200 to 300 acres of corn every year. So it'll just be me for 2 weeks going out for like 5, 6 hours a day. In June, July, just driving up and down those fields. And we're on a hill. So I'm sitting there like this, trying to keep everything going and not hit any of the corn.
I just need to point out real quick, you are a badass. That is so cool.
Thanks. My mom says that me cultivating corn is like how I pay my wages for the year just because we get decent return on it. But it's a really rewarding job because then in the spring or in the fall, when all the corn's full grown and it's like 10, 12 feet tall, I get to watch the combine come through and chop up all that corn, and we haul it back into these huge piles in our back bunker, which is where we store our feed. And it'll sit there and it'll ferment, and then we can feed it to the cows. So all of that has to be certified organic all the way through that process. And that's part of the reason we cultivate too, is because we can't use weed killers that conventional farmers use. So it's important to us that we cultivate it to make sure those weeds aren't getting in there and damaging our corn.
Yeah. Now, are you 100% fed off of your farm, your cows, or are you also supplementing with stuff from other farms?
Yeah, there's a local co-op called Premier Co-op, and we'll get kind of like a mix from them. It'll be like a grain mix of soybeans and some corn in there and other minerals and additives in there because cows are like an athlete and they need precision nutrition in order to do what they're going to do. So if one thing's done incorrectly, it'll throw off their whole system. So it's important to us to have a really well mix of feeds coming from that co-op to make sure that our cows are getting the supplements they need. So on our end, we're providing them with haylage, we're providing them with pasture, we're providing them with corn silage. We have oats sometimes, and all that stuff we put into this big old mixer is what it's called. And I equivocate it to cookie dough. It's like cookie dough. So you put all your fun ingredients in there, and then that stuff that comes from the co-op, our feed co-op, that's like the chocolate chips. Okay. You put the chocolate chips in there. It's tasty stuff. It's the fun stuff. It's the important stuff. Okay. And all that gets mixed up. And once mixed up, it's called a total mixed ration because it will give the cow everything it needs, all of the nutrients it needs to live and to produce milk and to run out in pasture. All that great stuff has to come from this ration. So I say another thing, it's like cows are like an athlete because every part of this not only has to be formulated correctly, but it has to come down to like the particle size of the feed has to be cut precisely so that it doesn't make the cow sick. You know, if you like chew something way too much or not enough, like doesn't go down right all the time. Same thing for cows. So if we cut feed and it's cut too fine, when the cow eats it, they're a fermenter. They're a ruminant animal, so they ferment all of their food. And their fermentation vat in their stomach, called the rumen, that's like its own microbiome. So if we're putting in feed that's too ground up, it's going to throw off the pH of that microbiome, and that cow is going to get sick really quick. So we have to make sure everything on our end, on the feed end, is perfectly taken care of so that our cows can thrive.
Tell me where you're located.
So we're just south of La Crosse, right on the west coast of Wisconsin.
Okay. And around you, are there also a lot of dairy farms? Is it dairy country?
Yes. So the Driftless region, which is where I'm from, is where the Cooperative Organic Valley was founded. So there are a ton of Organic Valley farms out here. And a lot of them are a little bit smaller than us, but there's still a ton of them still working and operating in our area, which is awesome. It's so great to
conventional dairies near you.
There are some conventional dairies, yes. There's some bigger ones a little east of us, like 1,200 cow dairies a little bit east to us. There's a couple more bigger farms in our area. And then there are some smaller farms too. There's a bunch of local creameries here. We have the Westby Creamery. We have Nordic Creamery. There's a local Amish creamery as well. And they're all making milk and shipping it out in their own way, shape, or form. So this is decently dairy country. And it's small dairy country. There's not a lot of room for big farms out here, even though we have a few here and there. The land is just too rolling hills and too much woods for there to be big farms.
In recent years, Wisconsin has seen more and more farms shutting down, especially dairy farms. Wisconsin is known for its dairy industry, but many dairy farms have struggled due to low milk prices, oversupply, and changing consumer preferences. Some dairy farms have been forced to close as a result. According to the 2022 data from the USDA, Wisconsin saw a reduction of 10% in overall farms and 30% in dairy farms over a 5-year period. This is nothing new for Wisconsin or for other big dairy states. We have been losing farms and dairy farms for far longer than the last 5 years.
Wisconsin got pretty badly hit in the last 5 years in terms of farm closings. And I think even since the census has lost the most number of farms. What are you hearing on the ground?
Yeah, so it's not as bad as it used to be. When I was starting college, I think they had 500 farm closures that year, which was really hard to hear about because you worry, am I next? It's gotten better since then. The market stabilized. I would say, unfortunately, the thing that really got agriculture and dairy farming back on track in Wisconsin would have to be COVID, because everyone was eating at home. So everyone was buying all the dairy products and all these whole food products that we were making. So they were eating our food again, which was great for us. It's kind of teetered off since then, but the wave's still been decent enough to carry us.
And do you sell all of your milk to Organic Valley?
Yeah, so Organic Valley is a co-op. So we are farmer owners in the co-op. So all of our milk goes to Organic Valley.
Explain what a co-op is and how it works.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So a co-op so Organic Valley is a marketing co-op. We are the farmer owners. We own the co-op. It is called Crop Cooperative. It stands for Coulee Region Organic Producer Pools. So the pools are eggs, meat, dairy, growing crops are the 4. And they all make up our company and our co-op. And then the brands would be Organic Valley, and then Organic Prairie is the meat division. So how this works is a group of farmers got together back in the late 80s, and they were kind of upset with how things were going in the dairy industry. It was a tough time for a lot of farmers across the country, and they decided to make their own co-op. So these guys are all buy into the co-op. They all own equity stock in it, and they all ship their milk together and then sell it as its own brand. Now we can sell milk under the brand Organic Valley, but we also can sell milk as ingredients to other companies. So like Annie's Organic, like the mac and cheese and the crackers. If they have any dairy product they need, they can buy that from us. We'll supplement it for their brand. We work with Stonyfield as well, so our milk will go to help supplement their brand. So when you're buying some of those brands, you're also getting our milk, even though you're not buying from Organic Valley. How it works is now we're up to around 1,700 farmers across the country are all producing for Organic Valley, whether that be Brussels sprouts, turkey, pigs. There was a guy in Canada doing asparagus for a while. We ship milk all across the country. We're all owners of this co-op. And now I said before, it's a marketing co-op, which means the way the company works is we have board of directors, and then we have a management of like CEO and executives, and then employees underneath them. And their job is to find the most efficient way to market our milk to the masses. So we do all the producing, and the employee side, make sure our milk's getting shipped, make sure it's getting all the tests it needs to be. They're packaging it, distributing it all across the country to all these different grocery stores. They have TikTok pages, Facebook pages, ads running on TV, all telling people, buy our milk because it's from me, people like me and my dad and my neighbors. And other farmers like us all over the country. And it's so cool. And I think there's a little QR code you can scan and it'll take you to the website. They have a Find Your Farmer website and you can find me or you can find your local farmers because it'll have like a little Find Your Farmer. And if you turn on your location, it'll be like, oh, there's a farm 4 miles from you and this is their name. Or it might, and some of the farms have little bios about them so you can learn more about the family farm that you're possibly drinking milk from.
I worry about the family farm as a marketing tool. There's slapping family farm on things that are bigger corporations that aren't really family farms. I don't think it does a service to a farm that is actually part of a family business, that where you and your dad and your brothers are working on your farm. That's a family. You're part of a co-op. Super smart of you. But I'm just worried about that a little bit.
That comment can go both ways. You know, I have a friend, her family milks 1,200 cows. That's a lot of cows. That's like 4 times the size of my family farm. Her farm employs 21 family members, and it's operated by her mom and her aunts. It is a woman-run farm, and she's over in the eastern part of the state. It's a little flatter. It's easier to have those bigger farms. But there's that misconception sometimes about like how big is a family farm. But to your point, there are some huge farms out there that like to quote unquote greenwash. I'm going to use, even though that's not entirely applicable to this. And communications and in marketing, everyone in the food industry loves to confuse the consumer, right? They like to put all natural. They like to use pasture raised, even if the cows aren't on pasture and even if it's not certified organic. They like to use non-GMO is a big one coming out, or like transitional, as in it's transitioning to organic. All these words are out there they're marketing words. They're there to get the consumer hooked. And Organic Valley uses all those words too, but they're the truth for us. And we always have to watch out and be like, well, if we say this, are they going to think we're with this company? Are they going to misunderstand us? Because we're just out here doing the good fight. We're trying to milk cows. We're trying to sell product. We're trying to stay in business. We're trying to keep our families across the country afloat, because if co-ops like Organic Valley doesn't exist, what's left for us? Those big brands and those big companies aren't going to take on a little 40 cow farm out in New England because they're not worth it to them. And it's hard. I said before, we're 350 cows. We're bigger for our area, but in the long run, if some other farm came along, if we had to switch co-ops for whatever reason and some bigger farm came along, we'd just be washed out by them because we weren't worth it. It's hard to be a family farm, and it's hard to see these other brands and these other businesses milking the image of the farm that we maintain in order to sell their product. And I don't want to name names, but there are some milk brands that are owned by huge soda companies or owned by Wall Street people. What can you say? Are those guys fighting the good fight, trying to keep small farmers in business?
Organic Valley works with a variety of farms, including some as small as 40 cows, though their average farm size is about 78 cows. They work with diverse communities such as the Amish and Mennonites, as well as smaller farms run by individuals or family members. The company, founded in the 1980s, played a pioneering role in establishing USDA-certified organic standards for produce and dairy, becoming a disruptor in the market.
We love being a disruptor. It's no fun playing by the rules.
What's the next disruption? Like, how are you the big disruptor in the 80s and here we are now, you're the grandmas of organic milk?
The industry's always changing. I'm not sure. Right now, the big thing in agriculture as a whole is carbon credits and seeing how we can bring down our carbon footprint. Farms have been working on that for a long time, and everyone always wants to point fingers at us for carbon. And it's such a complicated cycle. It's hard to just point fingers at one thing, especially when you can see all these other things going on and you go, why is it my fault? I work with animals. I raise crops. I live in an area where it's green and it's beautiful and I have trees around my farm. And when I say us, I'm talking about these Organic Valley farms that we work with. we're stewards of the land. We have to take care of the land in order to take care of ourselves, in order to take care of our animals, in order to take care of our crops. And if we're not a part of that, then we're screwing ourselves over, right?
Yeah.
We're not taking care of the land and all the things that take care of us.
The accusations of greenhouse emissions, it's easy to turn around and say, okay, well, it's your fault. You're the one with beef cattle. You're the one with dairy cows. Tell me what's wrong with that accusation.
We got to look at the carbon cycle, right? You've heard of the carbon cycle. So we have atmospheric carbon. All of our plants take in that carbon, go through photosynthesis, take in the carbon to make cellulose and sugar, and put out oxygen back into the air. We breathe it in and we put out carbon dioxide, right? And it works that way with cows too. So the reason people like to point fingers at cows a lot of the time for their part in the carbon cycle is because they release methane. And methane has a longer, or it's more potent, but it has a much shorter atmospheric lifespan than carbon does. So these cows let out methane. It sits in the atmosphere for a short bit, and then it degrades back down to carbon because methane is C4 and it'll degrade back to CO2. But still, this methane degrades back to carbon dioxide. And where does it go? Back into the carbon cycle, back into the plants. Cow eats the plant. Cow breathes in the oxygen from the plant. And they produce manure too, which fertilizes the plants. And, they're just another part of the carbon cycle.
So how do you combat that? I mean, you can talk about the carbon cycle on the milk carton, but cows have an opportunity to sequester carbon in the ground much more than pretty much any other industry. If we're talking about, like the cement business or automobiles, they don't have the opportunity to put carbon in the ground the way that livestock do.
Yeah, so our pastures, and we have a lot of other methods that we're using right now to help put this carbon back. So farms like mine, organic farms, Organic Valley Farms, we have a lot of trees on the farm. We have vast biodiversity on our farms. We have acres of pasture. That's just like grassland. A lot of our farms try to utilize some natural grasses with agricultural grasses. So like we have a lot of clover and orchid grass, and that's just grows. And we have bumblebees and we have birds that live out there. We have a ton of killdeers. I don't know if you know, killdeers are those, they're so pretty. They have like long legs and they just run through the grass. And if they see you coming, they run away from their babies because they're worried you're going to find their nest. Anyways, we have a ton of killdeers. We have eagles that fly over us. We're right by the river. So we have a ton of eagles by us. We have deer. We have all these awesome animals living on this habitat that we've created for our farm animals. So all that wildlife and all that grass is helping sequester that carbon. We grow crops. Those crops are also taking in carbon out of the atmosphere. We have big old trees. We have huge trees on our farm. They're gorgeous. They're maple, they're oak, and they bring in all that carbon too and suck it back down. A lot of our farms have solar panels on their barn roofs out in their fields, and they can just let their sheep out and graze around the solar panels because, it's technically grazing land. Organic Valley, the office buildings have solar powered energy, and they have 2 giant windmills that sit right outside off the campus of the buildings. And all of that energy is going to power these buildings that we have. 100% renewable energy, 100% renewable energy in the Organic Valley office buildings. Pretty cool stuff.
Do you feel like that you have to be on the defensive a lot?
I try to move myself from positions where I have to always be on the defensive because what eats away at you. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I think, am I doing the right thing being a dairy farmer, taking care of my animals the way that I do? And I always have to go, yes, like I'm doing the best that I can do to provide these animals with a good life and to take care of the land that I live on. Otherwise, if people are telling you all the time that you're the bad guy, you're going to start to wonder, are you really the bad guy? I have friends who do a lot of social media for agriculture, and I like to dabble in that some too, but sometimes I worry about going too far because then people are going to start commenting, people are going to start messaging me, people are going to start harassing me, and I don't want to always have to be on the defensive, trying to protect myself, trying to protect the other farms. I'm an advocate, I'm an agriculture advocate, okay? I will always advocate for agriculture, but advocating is not defending all the time, because I don't want to be on the defensive. And it's hard that you have to do it. End of the day, you have to do it. You have to know your stuff. You have to be well versed in communications so you don't say anything wrong. You got to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward, because if you make one mistake, people are going to be sitting there waiting for you, waiting to come for you and be like, oh, you know, those horrible, horrible dairy farmers and what they've done.
Yeah, it just takes one little headline. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, one headline, and then no one wants to drink milk, no matter where it's from.
I could take you to my fridge right now, and not because of our meeting, but I buy your milk. The milk I drink or use to make anything is always organic. And I like the idea of grass milk for sure, but that's just me. So I don't really care if I'm paying $5 and change for half a gallon of milk. But there are people who do. So
Food
where's
insecurity.
Organic Valley? I mean, you guys don't have bargain milk. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So the difficult thing is balancing supply and demand and price and that equity. We are probably considered a premium product by most people. We are held to a very, very high standard. And end of the day, I think part of that price comes down to the mission. The goal is to market milk so that farmers can have a stable pay price so that they can continue to farm. So when you're paying for that milk, you got to think about it this way. You're paying not only for high quality product, but you're paying for the family farmers. You're paying for the incredibly dedicated employees. You're paying so that kids like me have something to come back to after they go to school. You're paying for the drought that hit, and now somebody has to go and buy corn because all of theirs didn't make it. You're paying for a dad having to hire and help so that he can go to his kid's recital. Okay, all those big things, that's what that pay price is going to. And I understand it's not always affordable to everyone. We got to market that this is what it's all about. It's about families. It's about staying on the land. It's about keeping something that's been in your family for generations running.
To put milk prices into perspective, here are the different types of cow's milk that you can find in the supermarket and their prices. Conventional cow's milk costs anywhere between $2 and $4 a gallon, where organic cow's milk ranges from $4 to $6 per gallon, making it the more expensive option. These prices can fluctuate depending on the region you're in, but you get the picture. The higher quality the milk, the more care goes into it, so it has to cost more. But just as Sabrina said, you're keeping a family farm running for generations to come, which keeps your healthy and organic milk supply coming. Here's another note to think about. The way that farmers get paid in the Organic Valley Co-op program depends on many factors, but usually farmers get paid based on how much milk they produce. The pay can range from low 30s to around $12 per hundredweight. That's way less than what milk sells for in the stores. The main factors that affect how farmers get paid and in turn milk prices are things like where they are located, how close they are to where the milk gets picked up, and how good their milk is, which is determined by testing the fat and protein levels. Also, prices can change depending on the time of year. Some farmers only milk their cows during certain seasons because cows need a break before having a calf. Those who milk all year might get a little extra cash when there's not much milk around. When there's loads of milk, like in the spring when cows are eating tons of grass, prices might drop because there's too much supply. Organic Valley wants to make sure that farmers get a fair and steady pay, but it is a big topic of conversation.
If I'm a dairy farmer on my own, how is it different when I'm in the co-op? Is there more stability because a group of farmers in number, we're all getting sort of evened out by the co-op?
Yeah, if you're by yourself, I mean, if you're a farmer, you have to have someone to ship to. Okay. If you're by yourself, I mean, somebody might come pick up your milk once a day, 3 times a week, something like that. Pick up their milk and then they leave. And sometimes maybe you'll get a gift basket at Christmas and they'll just let you know how you're doing. Organic Valley Co-op, it's a community. It's a huge agriculture community across the country. We do calls for the farmers throughout the year, informational calls where you can learn more stuff. It's all about telling the farmers. I mean, we're owners in the co-op, so we got to know what's going on. So we have a huge annual meeting. All the farmers are there, all the employees are there. It's a huge get together. We have our business meeting. There's opportunities for people to talk. We have smaller meetings here and there from executives talking about marketing, talking about how the brand's doing as a community. Everyone's looking out for each other. We're all in this together, you know? I think people forget when you do stuff like this. We're all in this together. We're all on the same team here. We're just trying to make milk, raise chickens, produce eggs, sell meat.
When the co-op has calls with farmers, what's coming out of those farmers' mouths? Like, what is their besides really bad dad jokes?
It's ups and downs, right? As the market changes, as our lives change, there's a lot of older farmers right now across the country. And then there's new guys like me who are stepping into shoes. We all want something that's a little different, but sometimes we all want something that's a little bit the same. So it depends on what the content for those calls are. Sometimes it's just going to be informational, how to produce more milk with your cows, how to change your diets. Here's a new feed additive that just came out and maybe you should be utilizing it. Stuff like that. I'd say usually what farmers are talking about is how to balance what I'm being paid with the cost of operation. That's always a huge conversation. Talking about the weather, they'll be like, oh, I have had no rain here in 28 days. And somebody else would be like, it won't stop raining out here in Vermont. That was the thing this summer. It was just flooded out in Vermont. And then in Wisconsin, we'd go like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, no rain, stuff like that. Everyone, you have to be self-serving. You have to look out for yourself. I did say we're all in this together. So we have to balance, like, how do I look out for myself and those around me while also looking out for the best interest of the co-op?
So I was in my own refrigerator with my organic Valley, and I actually think I have a reel up where you can see inside my fridge. In my milk carton could be parts of milk from 1,000 cows. What I know is that they're organic. I just don't know where the particles came from.
Now it comes down to Organic Valley trying to do the good, right? And, you know, carbon footprint. They're trying to keep things as local as possible. They don't want to truck it all over the country. And that's like worst case scenario for the most part. But it depends on who's producing what kind of milk and where it can go. I would love for my milk to stay in the area. And for the most part, it's going to stay as close to here as it can. But if there's a pocket in Missouri where there's no dairy farmers and they need milk, they're going to send my milk down to Missouri. And they might send some other farms down to Missouri too.
We didn't really get into your specific role on your farm. And I don't want to miss that because it's a really important job. Without you, there are no lactating cows. So let's talk about your job, besides the very impressive tractor.
So when I first came home to the farm, my parents didn't really know what to do with me. So I was just kind of picking up odd jobs here and there, milk cows in the morning. My big gig was I'd let cows out to pasture every day in the summer. I graduated in May. We're starting pasture season, so I was letting cows out to pasture. I started cultivating, but I was just doing things here and there. I'd been on the farm for maybe 6 months when our herd manager, who we'd had for 22 years at the time, decided she was ready to move on. She was like, you know, your kids are home. There's a couple other young people on the farm who are planning to stay here for a while. It might be time for me to move on. So she left, and me, and there's another girl who's out of school, went to school for biology and environmental sciences. So a little different from her plans, but she's working on the farm full time. She's a couple years older than me, but we do all the herd management work now. It's all the record keeping on the cows, make sure the cows get bred, make sure the cows are healthy, make sure they're getting milked. We have record keeping system. We didn't for a while, but we finally got a record keeping system on our cows. So that what that means is we have a computer system and we can type in, say, cow 160. I'll type in the computer 160. It'll bring up her mom, her dad, her grandma, her great grandma, how many days she's been milking, all of the major events in her life that we've tracked. We have a new system now too. We have monitors for our cows. They have a little ear tag that'll tell us like their temperature, how much they're eating, how much they're walking around in a day. All that information is compiled into these two computer systems. So we can go, oh, that cow hasn't been walking in a while. Maybe we should go see if she has a foot problem. Or, oh, that cow's not eating. I wonder if she has an upset stomach or something. And so these computer systems really allow us to they're like an extra pair of eyes. We have a lot of cows. It's a lot to keep an eye on them, and we're just two people, and we have all these other animals and all this other stuff to do as well. So having those computer systems have been really great for us just to keep an eye on the herd and better track what's going on with them, because we can also track patterns then as well in their activity and in their life events. And we can go, oh, this one's mom had foot problems every now and then, and now she's exhibiting the same thing. Maybe when we looked further down the road, we should make sure that we have her scheduled to see the hoof trimmer every other month to make sure that that's getting checked so she doesn't have these problems later on. So that's one aspect of my job. I also take care of all the calves. Before I got here, I fed calves this morning. I have what's called a pasteurizer. It pasteurizes all the milk for us. So we have what's called the sick pen. And these are cows that maybe are feeling a little under the weather. Maybe we don't want to be putting their milk in the line right now for some reason. Maybe they just had a baby and we want to keep an eye on them, make sure they're doing good and all that. We'll save the milk from those cows and it'll go to all the calves. So last night they finished milking. They milked that group last. They put it all into this big tank on the pasteurizer. And overnight the milk cooled to refrigerator levels. And then about 2 hours before I show up in the morning, it starts heating that milk. So it'll heat it to 145 degrees or 148 degrees, and it'll hold it for 45 minutes and it'll pasteurize the milk and kill all the bacteria in there. And then right before I show up, it'll cool it down. I have it set to cool to about 112 degrees right now, just because it's cold out. It was 11 degrees this morning when I was feeding calves. So I keep it a little warm so that when it hits the pail or it hits the bottle to go to the calves, it has a little bit of wiggle room in terms of temperature so it doesn't cool right away. So I go out, I feed the calves. I start them on 4 pints of feeding. They get fed twice a day, and then they have grain and water free choice, so they can eat that whenever they feel like it. So I start them at 4 pints. That's half a gallon, so they're getting a gallon of milk a day, split between 2 feedings. Before I take them off of milk, they'll be drinking 2 gallons of milk a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. So start little. I keep an eye on them, make sure they're doing good. I'm like, you know what? That calf could eat more. I'll slowly start giving them more and more milk. They'll also be given more and more grain. And then at about 3 months, I'll take them off of milk and they'll go on to a hay and grain diet. And eventually they'll start getting silage and they'll just keep growing and growing and growing. And at around 2 to 3 years old, they'll finally be old enough to have a calf and enter the milk herd.
And the boy calves are sold off immediately, or?
Yeah, for the most part, we sell most of our beef calves. If there's a really cute one, I'll say, Daddy, can we keep him? And then we'll raise him up for beef. But it's been a few months since I've done one of that. We have a really cute red one a while back, and I was like, Dad, he's kind of cute. Can we keep him? We got to keep him. So I have my red bull calf, and then I have 2 beef calves right now. Their names are Bonnie and Clyde, and they were naughty little stinkers, but they're so cute together, and they live in their own little pen by my parents' house. And every day when I drive to my mom's to drop off my lunch and everything, I get to see them all play it. God, they're so funny. They're always playing out in their little pasture corral, and they're cute.
Organic Valley is a cooperative with more than 1,600 family farms like Sabrina's in its stable. I would love to hear some of that family chatter in their meetings, wouldn't you? They are all owners. They are all farmers. They are part of a disruptor culture. They are also part of a dairy industry that has its fair share of challenges that it must meet in order to survive. I can't help but think that in a space where wholesome meets disruptor meets opinionated expert, that you end up with something pretty honest. A product built on hard work and smart marketing in a specialized niche where high quality and attention to detail and integrity matter. Organic Valley is the 3rd largest in the organic dairy space. The top dog in terms of the almighty dollar is Organic Horizons, which sits on the refrigerated shelf next to Organic Valley. It is not farmer-owned. Instead, it is owned by Platinum Equity, a private equity investment firm founded by Tom Gores in 1995. It's headquartered in Beverly Hills, California, and focuses on mergers and acquisitions. Sometimes brands can seem similar when you see them on the supermarket shelf. Now at least you know a little bit more about what's inside when you reach for organic milk. Whatever you choose, Say hi to Sabrina when you see that Organic Valley carton. She's in there, along with her 2 brothers and 1,600 other farmers who are committed to keeping the dairy market on its toes. Aren't you glad you joined me here for One Bite is Everything, the podcast where you can have a big impact on your health, your community, and the planet through tiny informed choices. Now you know a lot more about what's on your dairy milk shelf in the supermarket. This conversation has cleared up a lot for me. I hope that you are here for the long haul as One Bite is Everything unpacks other brands, important topics, legislation, and small ways that we can all make a real and lasting difference in the world in ways that impact our health, the planet, and our communities. Go ahead and hit follow or subscribe in the app where you're listening to this episode so you don't miss what's coming. And if you are feeling extra grateful to Sabrina for understanding what's beyond the label, leave a review in the Apple Podcast app or go to onebiteiseverything.com and leave a review there. I am your host, Dana DiPrima, and I am so glad that we are in this together. See you next week.